This is the help video for Word Chapter 4, Pause and Practice 4.1. On the left side, I have the instructions from my sim book, and on the right, I have the downloaded start file that I need for this assignment. I'm going to enable editing on my document and start looking at what I need to do. So one of the things you always want to look at is at the beginning of the chapter. It'll always tell you here. So we have 4 pause and practices. So when I go to rename this file, I'm going to use that 4 on the end. So I'm going to do save as, and then I'm going to browse. I'm going to keep it in my downloads. It's going to be my initials, PP, W. We're in chapter 4, and there's 4 pause and practices. So now the file's renamed. You don't have to worry about it as we move through the pause and practices. So we're going to move to the end of the document and insert a table. So the first thing is, how do I quickly get to the end of the document? We know that we can do Control Home to get to the top. We can do the opposite, Control End, the END key. It'll take us to the very end of the document. If I reveal my codes, my hidden codes here, I can see I'm at that last paragraph mark. So we're going to insert, and we're going to do a table. So let's review what kind of table we're going to do. A 3x7 using the table grid. Okay, so we're going to come here, 3. So I could do different ways of inserting, but we're using the grid. So we want to go over 3 and down 7. Now it's not so, it's nice to get the configuration as close to what you need, but you can modify it as you go, and we're going to see that here in a minute. So I'm thinking that I need 3 columns and 7 rows, so I'm going to click on it, and my table is now inserted. So I want to just talk a little bit about tables. So these are columns going down. Across our rows. If you want to select a row, just like we did out, you just click outside. If you want to do a column, do you see how my cursor changes to that black down arrow? That does that, right? This little symbol here, it's a box with the 4 with a cross with 4 arrows. Click on that, it selects the entire table. All right, so what we're going to do is type this in. I'm going to do the first few, and then I'm going to type it outside the movie. You don't need to watch me type. So I'm going to click in this first cell, and I'm going to type commitment. And then I'm going to get to the next, I'm going to hit the tab key. It's going to move me over to the next cell, to the needs of the client. Tab, there's nothing in that one, so I'm going to tab again to go down to the next row. Communication, tab, seek first, to listen, tab, and keep typing. Okay, I have everything typed in, and now is the time that you want to review your typing. So I'm going to take my codes off just so it's easier. And right here I made a mistake, right? You can see the red lines. So you should have no red lines, blue lines, green lines, nothing on any of these. So I need to fix this before I move on. So I'm going to point to that word and right click, and it thinks these might be 2 of the choices that I really am trying to type, and it is creativity. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to fix it, okay? After I type, I'm going to come up here and do the quick save for a minute. And I'm looking at it, and I realize that I do not need this 3rd column, right? But I also realized I left off 2 of these lines. So let's take care of that. And that's step 5, delete a column and insert rows. So right here, I'm going to do that motion where I move my mouse to the top line. And you see how it changes to the black down arrow? I'm going to click, and this is how I do it. Right click, delete columns. You can come up here to table design, and as long as you're in that column, you can, layout, and delete delete columns. So it gets you the same way, once again pointing out that there's several different ways to do the same action. Okay, so I realized that I forgot trust in the win-win. So I'm going to put my cursor right here at the very, well, let's see, where do they want us to do it? Second row. Place the insertion in the second row. Okay, so up here in layout, we want a new row between communication and integrity. So in this rows and column on the layout tab, I'm going to say insert below, and it just pops in a new row. So now I can type trust tab begins with communication. So I got that done. So if you want to insert in an existing table, you can do either a row or a column, right? It's right here in this rows and column on layout. If I am creating my table and I realize let's say I made it 5 rows and I have more than 5. On the last cell, all you need to do is hit tab and it'll insert a new row at the end, right? So putting new ones on the end are super simple. You just keep tabbing and it'll just keep putting it in there. All right, so we're done with 5. Let's move on to 6. Auto-fit the table and adjust the column and row sizes. Okay, so auto-fit is a concept where you fit this table to some measure. So it could be the size of the data in a column. It could be to the entire page. You know, there's different ways that you can do this. So we're going to auto fit the contents. So the big thing is, and I do want to show you this here. So if you're not in the table, you don't have the table tab. The minute you click, you get table design and layout. Okay. If you don't see them, it's simply because you're not in the table. You're not in the object, right? So I'm going to be in the object, and we want to auto fit the contents. So that is in our layout group, and we want to look at the cell size right here. So you can adjust manually the size. We want to auto fit. So we're going to click the down arrow there. Notice you can do contents, window, and column with fixed, where you set every one to be a certain amount. We're going to auto fit contents, and watch my table when I do that. So it shrinks it all up, and it makes the columns just as, or I'm sorry, the cells, the rows, the columns, just as big as it needs to be to hold the data. So that's pretty cool. But I think it's a little tight, right? So yeah, it pulled it back, but I think I want a little more space in this first column, right? So if I go back up to this, I'm in the first column, right? I don't have it to have it selected. I just have to be in it. If I come up here to cell size, and there's a height and a width. So we want to change this width to 1.2. Okay, and you can see, like, I'm doing 1.2 because of the instructions, but if you're just looking at this, you just click it until you think it looks good. Okay, same thing, we're going to go over here to column 2, and we're going to up that to 2, and all that does is put a little extra white space around it so that the letters aren't so scrunched. Okay, so now this is cool, but I want to kind of expand these the rows a little bit, because the letters, it's kind of tight. So to do that, I want to do all the rows. So I'm really saying the whole table. So I'm going to click on that box at the corner, and it's going to select the whole table. Okay, there's a couple different ways. The way they want us to do it is go to Properties for cell size, go to Row, specify row to be 0.25 exactly. So you're saying every one of these rows is going to be 1/4 of an inch tall exactly. And then you can see the space, and it has adjusted. So now one of the things that I'm not so happy about, Well, there's no header on here, right? So I don't know what this table's about. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to insert a row. So we know we can use this layout rows column group to do some kind of insertion and deletion of rows and columns. I'm going to say insert above, and it puts it above it, right? We're going to select this first column if it's not, I'm sorry, the first row if it's not already selected. And then we want to find in the merge group these merge cells. So what we're doing is instead of making this row 1 2 columns, we're going to make row 1 1 column. So there it is. I just clicked merge cells, and now it is one that it goes across the whole table. So then I can type in the title of this table. It's the Placer Hills belief system. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so the next thing that I want to do is to sort the table by the first column. So we want to select just rows 2 through 10 because we don't want to include the header, the title of the table, in the sort. So then in this table tool layout, in this data group, you'll see that there's a sort option, and sorting is just placing something in order. You can do it ascending, which is like ABC, or descending, CBA, right? Or 1 2 3, 3 2 1. So we want to sort it ascending, so that's A to Z, and we want to do it by column 1, and we're going to use text and paragraph ascending. Okay, and so it rearranged. Remember, trust we put up here in the second one. Now it's down here. It put everything in order by this first column alphabetically. Okay, so we're getting pretty close to having this table done. It's looking okay, except there's a couple things I don't like about it. So one is aligning things. So let's work through that. So we're going to select the entire table, and we want to work with the cell margins, and so what that designates is the amount of white space around. So we're in the table tools layout in the alignment group, and let's see what I'm missing here. Table options. We want to do, hold on, layout, cell margins, and we get our table tool option. So we want to do a left and right. Instead of 0.8, we're going to do 0.5. It's going to tighten the text up against the edge. It's going to reduce some of that white space. And let's see, resize to fit, okay. And do you see it all move just a little bit? All right. Click the align center left. So these are the alignments. And so there's pictures that tell you. And then if you're not sure, if you hold your cursor on it, it will pop up. So we want to do align center left. Okay, did you see the text? Let me undo that. See how the text is kind of up towards the top? If I click that, it moves it. Still left in the cell, but centered up and down, and that looks a whole lot better. All right, so then we want to just put our cursor in the first row. And for this row, we're going to do align center. Whoops, center, sorry. This one that centers left and right and up and down, so it's spaced correctly. So that table looks really good. I'm not so crazy about its placement on the page, but we'll work on that later, and then I think we're going to do some more formatting with it. But that's it for Pause and Practice 1. So I would save, and the next movie you'll pick up on 4.2. Thank you.